Krishnamurti and Pratik, I've had the joy of knowing each one of them for such a long time that, it's been amazing to see their journeys. So I'm so happy that they have decided to give us this gift of their time today. And I'm sure this is going to be a treat for all of us. So I just wanted to come in and just thank them. And now I will be like a fly on the wall. I'll shut off my audio and video and just enjoy the proceedings. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Anil.
Thanks, Anil, and welcome all the panelists, and good evening to one and all, the webinar attendees and my dear students. I'll just give a word about myself. I am Vidya Desai. I am the director at the Soil School of Business Design, the 2-year program. We're very privileged to host 4 eminent HR leaders who had different journeys, but I think somewhere, as we would say, confluence of all the journeys towards remarkable experiences that would enlighten the audiences of the panel today, the junior set of people who would be the beacons of light in the future. So this whole webinar is designed on the basis of the book, wonderful book, developed by Shri Arvind Agarwal and Professor Rao. Aptly said, it's a crucible. So I'm sure each one of the leaders here has had many melting pot stories in the crucible, and what has defined their, the jewels on their crown as the embellishments through their career. So I'm not using the words as adjectives because I can very well fathom from the cases that we have read how much of an arduous journey they've been through, both personally and professionally, to reach to the points where they have. So what we would love to do is, we would love for our students to pose questions as students and understand from the experiences of the seniors as to how the students could travel their journeys ahead. While there are no straight linear paths, but definitely there are experiences that one should find as, the milestone dots, if we may say, that people can take cues in their life from. So may I invite Ginny to start, and then she would pass the baton around. Ginny, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I welcome all the panelists to the webinar, and I hope this webinar would be beneficial to all the participants who have joined in. So starting with the panel discussion, I would like to pose my first question to Mr. Raghu Krishnamurti. Sir, you have clearly set a benchmark for all the HR leaders in making throughout your career. But my curiosity is there to ask one question, that you have done your degree in finance from IIM Ahmedabad and have been keen professional in finance for many years. What is it that led you to switch your career paths to HR? What are the qualities and incidents that you would like to highlight in this regard?
Thank you, Jenny, and hello to everyone. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be with all of you today. I must say that there are some really eminent HR leaders in this forum. I must be the least distinguished of them. Thank you for asking that question, because I was a finance person. My background was based on my father's interest that I complete my chartered accountancy. I went into chartered accountancy, but then I was fortunate enough to be admitted to my MBA course. And in MBA those days, in the early 80s, HR was not popular. If you wanted to focus on HR, you would go to XLRI like Pratik and some of the other folks did. I instead flipped to HR pretty much the second half of my stint at IIM Ahmedabad, because I realized that numbers are binary, 0 or 1, but people are all shades of gray. And I was really motivated by the shades of gray. That was one reason why I switched over to HR. The second reason is somewhere along the line, as I went through a very deep experience with one of the professors, I realized the question that I needed to ask myself is not just about what I wanted to do, but what kind of person I wanted to be. And the question on what kind of a person I wanted to be led me to saying I wanted to be in the service of people. Right? Numbers don't fulfill that, right? If you look at an organization, an organization with values and people convert it from a thing to a person. So in some ways, everybody has to be an HR person because that's all there is to organizations. And I felt that was the motivator for me to then pursue a path in human resources.
Right. So great to know that. And very rightly said, every professional or a manager in that sense has to be an HR manager, because if you don't know how to deal with people, then eventually the work gets affected. So, sir, throughout your journey, you must have realized that as an HR professional, you need to be extremely empathetic, and at the same time, it leads you to a position where you need to take some hard decisions for the organization as well as your own personal development. So, what are the challenges that you faced in this regard, and what are the qualities? How can they be built over the years? What is your advice to the students in this regard as to how to overcome these challenges and also develop the ability side by side to uh, deal with such situations?
Great question. Making hard calls on people is an occupational responsibility, occupational hazard, so to speak, in HR, right? So from that point of view, one of the realizations you have as you spend many years in HR is that you have to be really cold in your decision making, but warm in how you execute that decision. And the biggest lesson for me was that when I was in Thailand many years ago during the Asian financial crisis, we had to lay off hundreds of people. And those days in the 90s, when you lay off people in Asia, it was not just a career issue, it was also a social issue because the stigma was pretty high. So I had to lay off 1,000 employees pretty much in 3 months' time. So I went through the whole process. It was Six Sigma. G was very famous for Six Sigma those days. I did everything possible as per the guidebook on Six Sigma. And one day I had to lay off all the 1,000 people. I had to do it within 3 months. So I went through the whole process in the morning, laying off batches of people because the country had gone into bankruptcy. In the afternoon, I heard sirens. Bam, bam, bam. Sirens were so noisy that it was distracting. So I went to the window to see what was happening. Only then I realized that one of the people whom I had laid off in the morning decided to jump out of the 6th floor window. And fortunately for us, he fell on the awning of the entrance, which is the cover. So he was seriously injured. He was not killed. And the reason we found out later was he couldn't bear the thought of going back home, right? And that's when you realize that it's not what you do, it's how you do things that makes a material difference. And therefore, not recognizing the cultural dynamics, not being empathetic, not viewing the world through the lens of the affected party was a lesson learned. You know, oftentimes successes are fleeting, but mistakes and failures are a conversion experience. It stays with you forever. So in my case, the recognition of the fact that I can never, had this person passed away, it would have been on my conscience forever, right? So the realization dawned on me saying that it's about making sure that you're not just the gatekeeper, but also the goalkeeper, protecting an organization's interest, protecting the, you are a steward of how an organization comes through in terms of people. And the biggest takeaway for me was, as an HR person, caring and empathy is a currency.
That's amazingly great to know, sir. So, another question for you is that you have worked and served corporate for several years, and now you've switched to academics, serving the human resources. You've been the student yourself and seen how learning has been at that time, and now you are also evidencing the learning of today. So there has definitely been a shift of mindset in which people absorb what is being delivered and their ways of absorbing it. So what according to you are those, and what are your advices in that line?
Well, I think one of the things that I recognize, I spent 38 years in the corporate world. And when I retired in 2019, it was during a very turbulent period at GE. That's when I said, I'm turning 60, I need to do something else. One of the recognitions and opportunities I had was, I had a career's worth of baggage that I needed to unlearn. And I had to figure out a way to do that. And that's why I embarked on my doctoral journey here. And then once I graduated, I'm now part of the faculty. In the initial stages, after having a very busy life, where I had an career adventure, HR adventure, honestly, the need was for me to remain, I was searching to remain somebody and resist being classified as a nobody. When you retire, you pretty much, become a nobody. So I had to figure out a way to stay relevant. And I recognized that meant that I need to rediscover myself, reconstruct myself. And of course, I didn't want to lose the advantage of many years I had as a professional. So I wanted to further that. And it's given me an opportunity to look at HR, look at learning, look at leadership through a fresh lens. Let's take leadership, right? We've all received a whack on the side of the head thanks to the pandemic, right? It's changed us forever. And you recognize a few things. For instance, power is no longer a resource. Authority is no longer a resource. Influence is a premium resource. Empathy is a premium resource. So you are starting to see that the assumptions we had for many, many years unravel. And to be in the pulse of what is changing is an exciting opportunity, because what you do is you learn yourself that whatever assumptions you had is no longer relevant. I'll give you an example. As long as I was in GE, I forbade deliberately the concept of remote work. I didn't agree with that. And now 3 years down the line, my thesis was on remote work. And the recognition was the fact that, shouldn't we rethink our assumptions? For instance, is productivity more important or purpose more important? Is the concept of busyness more important, or is the concept of meaningfulness more important? So those are things that you say, all right, okay, the world is changing. What are the new paradigms that we need to move into? So for me to research, to discuss, to learn, and talk about that so that I can then make sure that the people whom I teach and whom I chair in terms of dissertations have a different way, different path from the one I had going forward. So for me now, I see myself as the new HR leadership architect. And I'm privileged to be the steward of that in my own little way.
Great. I think this is very rightly emphasized that in the business dynamic world today, the dynamics of the business world today, it's very important to focus on the sense of purpose. And it's not the authority or power that rules, but definitely the influence and collaboration. Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to pass on to Rudra for the further discussion.
So good evening to one and all present here. I want to start by saying that it's really a true honor and privilege to be part of this, because if it wasn't for this discussion, I don't think at this point in my life, I would have talked with any of these people present over here. So my question is directed towards Prateek, sir. Sir, throughout your journey, I have been through a chapter and it was really inspirational to say the least. And throughout your journey, I've seen that you have been part of great institutions, right? From XLRI, you have met amazing teachers. But one thing that I saw was you invested in human relations throughout your journey. You have been in touch with all the people you have been associated with. And what do you think has that impacted in your career objectives and your life?
So first of all, thanks, Rudra. Your question is something which is applicable to all of us. And it's something which you carry with you. Some people are naturally good and gifted at it. And we all understand the significance of being able to, carry on with the relationship which we have nurtured over the years. And it's not bound by the positions you hold, it's not bound by the institutions you come from. But these are people who you meet, interact, engage in your own journey of your life, right? And I've always viewed that there is something which I end up learning from each individual. And that learning doesn't necessarily come from the people who are more senior to me, who are more experienced than me. But as long as we have the humbleness to know that I don't know enough, and humility to learn from anyone who can help you on your path of learning, you will be richer by that experience. So this is something which I actually realized fairly early in my career, and I would actually credit myself that I do have the tendency to observe. I do have the tendency to absorb, and I do not miss out on the opportunity to learn from any individual I come across. I've always maintained as a personal philosophy. I mean, very often when you interact in many forums, they end up asking you the question on, who's your role model, and, who do you learn from, and who inspires you? And while there are a lot of people who actually end up influencing you, I think the term itself is a little, I would say, overemphasized. I mean, each one of us are uniquely gifted in whoever we are. And likewise, I have an opportunity to learn from whoever I actually engage and interact with. And in my own observance, some of the most gifted leaders I've actually come across. I mean, they make it a point to make sure that they interact, engage. So I learned this, something which was fairly early in my career. And as I moved through in my own career journey, moving from one role to the other, moving from functions to another function to a business role, is something which I've actually found that I carry. But there's only one thing which Rudra, I would like to, and for the benefit of others who are listening in, is that you don't manage relationship. The term seems to have an element of manipulation, right? I mean, if you respect relationship, you value relationship, you will give respect to people you come across, and in the process, you will actually have the same getting reciprocated to you. And it doesn't matter. It's not only in your career sphere, but even in your journey of life. If you manage to blend that, I think you would be a richer individual in the process.
Thank you, sir. I think this line is going to stay with me for my life. Don't manage relationships, respect them. Another question, sir, for you is, you have been associated with Wipro for over 2.5 decades now. And before that, you did change some jobs, but what were those defining moments in your career when you thought that actually this is where I belong and I'm going to stay here?
Career has got many elements to it, right? I mean, what makes for a successful career, if I can call, I mean, you need a lot of elements to actually fall in place. I mean, you need to have a good nurturing organization for sure. You need to have, great set of colleagues and team members to work along with. Organization to have a purpose, which in a way it resonates with how you actually see yourself and your own value system. And it's very difficult to actually find all that things coming together in one place. So yes, in the initial part of my own career journey, I did wander around a bit. And when I happened to join Wipro as an organization, really, I was not too sure. And I have never kind of scripted my career with very defined timelines. And I said, look, let me take one step at a time. And there are organizations, and many of us, even my other colleagues on the panel here, I mean, they've served their own organizations and they've been in their own way institution builders. It grows on you. So I've been very privileged to have actually worked with a great set of people, great set of mentors, part of the organization, which gave me the space, which gave me the opportunity to explore my own capabilities, reach out and do something which could be considered a little risky, allowed me to trip along the way, allowed me to steady myself along the way. And you really have to be lucky to be able to have that opportunity in one place, which I actually got in Wipro. So there was no reason at any stage for me to look anywhere else. One thing which I would like to, I mean, you did mention 2.5, it's been a little over 3 decades now I've been part of Wipro. You do not you don't measure your experience in terms of the chronological age of your association with anything or the institution. It's always the variety of experiences which you are exposed to, and how you actually fold that into your own learning. And if, as long as you're being able to actually do that, you are constantly growing, you're constantly learning, and which, when I look back in my own career journey, I think I feel very, very fortunate to have had that opportunity.
Thank you so much, Pratik sir. And you talked about how supportive organizational culture takes you along with it. And my next question is in the same lines. So in your chapter, it is emphasized that HRs today should have the muscles to talk directly to the leadership. I have seen people, my friends and everyone, they just go along with the culture of the organization and then go with the flow. So how do you bring that mentality in today's HRs, that you should have those guts to talk directly to the leadership and be strong enough to make those judgments?
So, one, of course, the organization needs to actually allow you that space and create that safe and secure environment for you to be able to speak. And, it's not about just speaking out, it's being able to give your own constructive inputs to the organization where you think it will be valued. And by the way, it's not something which is restricted to just one function, but anyone. And a lot of organizations, they nurture this quality very, very diligently. When you are in the room, around the table, you're not holding a certain title. I mean, you are there because you're bringing something specific onto the table, and you have an opportunity to contribute as much as anyone else. And I think it's a great disservice if we have that opportunity and then we hold ourselves back in being able to share, which is for the larger organization good. More so in HR because, in many ways, we are custodian of a lot of things which touch employee on an ongoing basis. And at least in my experience, I've always, when I think of HR people which I have looked up to in my own career, I mean, consistently, there are a few qualities which always stood up. And there are a lot of things which people consistently exhibit. But if you ask me in my own dictionary, in my own book, something which I actually touched on, they carry themselves with great humility and humbleness. I mean, the humbleness to, they're lifelong learners. They learn from anybody. They don't restrict themselves to the functional boundaries. They build in the breadth to go beyond, right? I mean, they are curious. They want to understand. If you're an HR person for a business, you should actually go through the highs and lows of the business. And you must feel as perturbed as a salesperson who actually misses out on a deal like anyone else. So, you need, and for that, you need to actually build that appreciation, which goes beyond just your own functional boundaries. You must have the courage to challenge, right? And you'll be surprised, once, it doesn't take too much other than just the belief and the conviction and just a sense of feeling secure that, my inputs and my view is something which is valued. And the last of it is, of course, is that take pride in what you do. And that is something which I very often share it with many of my own HR colleagues in Wipro as well. Many a times we begin to we carry this slight question mark somewhere whether we have a voice in the room or not, right? I mean, the starting point is that you have to believe that you have the seat at the table and you have an opportunity to contribute. But more important, take intense pride in what you're doing, because you are the way and the manner in which you can actually make a difference, more so in today's time, is immeasurable. So it's like any other significant critical role in the organization which determines the outcome and shapes the direction of the organization. You have the same opportunity. So these are few of the things which I've actually observed and I consistently look for in HR professionals, be it within or outside.
Can I just add
Thank
something?
you so much, Pratik.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Pratik, that was very powerful. I fully agree with you, and especially during times of rapid change, turmoils of change, HR often becomes an act of courage.
Yeah, true. Well put. Yeah. Sorry, Rudra. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, sir. Thank you so much, Pratik sir. I think those were really valuable insights, and not just for me personally, for everyone watching this session tonight. So you talked about how HRs have the potential of being the real game changers, and this is actually something that is going to stay with me. Further, I would like to invite Chinmay to take this conversation further.
Thank you, Rudra. So I'm feeling extremely ecstatic because I'm going to talk to Mr. Rajiv Dubey. So I'll just give a very small introduction of me as to why I'm very happy and ecstatic also. So sir, I've started my HR journey, actually my career journey with Mahindra. So talking to you, like I've heard from my managers, from my skip level bosses about you. So I mean, this feeling is unparalleled. So like, I'm thanking soil also right now for this opportunity. So yeah, I think I should not get carried away because there's high chances that I would. But I read in the chapters about you, about how you brought in the RISE philosophy, and now when I remember me, like when I joined Mahindra, and you were a part of building the RISE pillars, those 5 pillars. So from the day I've joined until now, something so powerful being implemented in a corporate sector, that is really commendable, sir. So that that's something that I can only wish for to achieve someday. So yeah, all of the things that I've read about you and also get to know about you from day to day is great. So my question, I'll just try to not bring any biases in, because being a HR professional myself right now also, but you talked about something very powerful, sir. I would quote it. You said that what happens is the only thing that could have happened. What happens is the best thing that could have happened, and what has happened has happened. So no one should waste any more time in anger, guilt, or regret, or repeatedly asking why. Whether it's good or bad, focus instead on what to do now. And this is the kind of philosophy, sir, that I feel that we should try and bring in the minds of employees also. I would slightly relate it to that, how should HR professionals nowadays bring in and inculcate that fear-free environment for employees to basically fail, to basically get up, to basically try again and again, because they will achieve the success, but not actually frown. So I think as HRs, it is our duty also, and also our major roles to play in their lives to keep their motivations high. So on the same line, sir, what would be your advice to HR professionals on that?
Okay, very difficult question. So first of all, I must put matters straight. RISE was brought in by Anand Mahindra.
Yes, sorry, Anand Mahindra, sir. Yes, himself.
Just a part of that journey. So my advice to HR professionals and to anybody, I mean, I really don't think that the advice I would give to HR professionals would be any different to the advice I would give to any professional or to any human being for that matter. I would say that focus, be led by purpose, focus on unleashing the potential of people and of ecosystems that you are connected with, and do it in a way that drives positive change in every interaction that you have. So it's about being led by purpose, focusing on unleashing the potential, and doing it in a way that drives positive change. So this is what I would suggest. And I would also urge them never to deviate from the path of Satya, Prem, and Seva. Truth, yes, compassion, and service. Sorry, so that's a lot of things put together.
No, but truly said, sir, I definitely agree with everything you stated. And purpose is definitely that should drive a person and not the outcome rather. So yeah, I definitely I would agree with that. So I would also want to ask you another question, sir. Nowadays, digitalization is coming in, especially after the 2 years of COVID that we have had. Like virtual reality is coming in, but how do we still make sure that the essence of HR is being, reaches our internal stakeholders, our customers, that are our employees? So how do we make sure to, reduce that gaps?
Yeah. So I think what you're really saying is, yes, there will be a lot of technology, but does that mean that the human factor is not important? And I'd like to suggest that actually with the advent of technology in every aspect of our lives, the human factor or humaneness or humanity actually becomes even more important. And why am I saying that? Well, I could give you a sort of fancy seemingly glib answer, but let me try. So technology will be everywhere. It will be like electricity, but therefore what you use technology for really is important. And you cannot deliver many things without human beings, right? And as I see it in the new normal, which is, VUCA and pushback by stakeholders and highly interconnected, you need to be taking decisions, proactive, iterative decisions right through the value chain, right? And therefore, you need to have what one calls distributed leadership, where people are empowered, and you cannot have empowerment unless there is empathy. So that comes in there. And unless there is trust, which is also a human factor. And equally important, you need to be able to understand the stakeholders that you interact with, which also requires empathy. So you can see that the human factors of compassion and empathy and trust are vital to the business decision making. And therefore, I'd like to say that as long as there are human beings that we are serving, and businesses are nothing but attempts to solve the problems for other human beings who we call stakeholders or customers, the human part, which is focused on, as I said, compassion and truth and trust, will be vital to the way we conduct business in the new normal.
That's true. Thanks a lot, sir. I have another question, sir, that talks about being from a generation wherein a lot of people want to experience new things and keep on exploring and changing their career paths and trying a lot of things. But where I have, I'm witnessing all of you present here who have actually contributed in building institutions. So how would you actually, what would be your takeaways actually, that what made you stick around, and what, how did it matter to you to be there rather than to maybe, exploring something else?
Well, I have to be very truthful that maybe I didn't have the kind of opportunities that are there now for young people, and therefore people can change. So, that's true. Also, I came with a mindset that if I'm making a commitment to a person or to an organization, it's almost a lifelong commitment. And I have to be very frank that, I left Tata's after 29 years,
yes,
not because I was keen to leave, but I was almost sort of pushed into a situation where I had no choice but to leave. But I was very lucky, that I sort of got into Mahindra. But I don't think changing is bad. I think what is important is that as long as you are with an organization, you must be totally committed and you must be driven by the purpose of that organization and give of yourself with a lot of passion. Give 100% of yourself to what you're doing as long as you're there, right? And of course, if you like some place really and you find that your purpose and the purpose of that organization are gelling, and that organization is giving you the ability to learn and to grow, then you yourself may not want to leave. But my sense is that, a lot of people will actually change. But I would say that as long as you're with an organization, be committed, give yourself 100%, have the passion, and join only those organizations whose purpose and your purpose are in the same direction and meld with each other.
Of course. Yes, I agree, sir. So my last question would be, sir, I'm very eager to know, and would be that, as HR professionals, we try to make lives of others better. We try to remove their hurdles, whatever they are facing in their career. We also try to cross that line and help them personally if we can. So, but what were your anchors, sir, throughout this journey? 29 years in Tata, 17 years in Mahindra. So what were your anchors? Who or what things played your HR in your life? So I would really want to know.
Okay, so I mean, I guess anchors were partly some views of the world and some values, and also some people and events, right? So that's, right, I guess, what you mean by anchors. So for me, I was driven by the desire to make a difference and to make a positive difference in the lives of those I interact with. I mean, I know that's what RISE also says, but yes, please believe me, that's what I always wanted to do, to make a difference and a positive difference. Yes. So that was one of the main anchors that drew me. And the other one was that wherever I am, let me do my best. So I did very little career planning. I didn't sort of plan. I mean, a lot of things that happened in my life, happened almost without my knowing why they are happening. It's not that I had an overall plan, but I do know that wherever I went, and sometimes I was put into situations which I thought were, not good and not good for my overall and the overall sort of trajectory of life. But I said, okay, I am where I am. Now I can't change it. Let me do my best. Let me do everything that I can to make a contribution to this organization and to the people who I interact with, and especially to those who are dependent on me. Right. I did that in my professional life. And I also, I never distinguished between my personal life and my inner space and my professional life. To me, my professional life was just one manifestation of myself, as was my family life, but everything was simply a manifestation of my inner self and my beliefs and my values and whatever I thought was my purpose. So I don't know whether I'm making any sense to you.
No, it definitely is, sir. It definitely is. And I think you also answered one of the questions that people talk about, work-life balance. So, when you bifurcate the two things that, you said, then maybe it is difficult, but once you start enjoying it and, you find that purpose, so that is also pure. So thanks a lot, sir. I'm taking a lot of things with me today. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Vidya ma'am, I invite you now to please take it forward.
Yes, thanks, Chinmay, and nice to see the students, with their poise and learn from people who possibly, as Rudra said, they would rarely get a chance to meet. And apologies, Dwarka sir, for having kept you waited. And
not an issue. I was enjoying the dialogues from my friends, and I'm really enlightened by hearing to them.
So I took the turn to chat up with you on some questions because I had already read the chapter about you, and I said, no, this is mine. I'm not going again and over, because I read all the 4 chapters and I said, okay, let me do this. A couple of questions, I think others would also be invited after Dwarka ji takes the turn to answer. First thing, you had a space shift in terms of moving from the south to the north and then jumping careers, both happening parallelly, if I'm right. And
yes.
How did you manage that? Because adaptability today is made to be a great skill.
As my friend Rajiv said, you have no choices. You have to try hard, right? You see, it's a great question you said. If you see that I have never scripted my career, as some of them have said. My father wanted me to become a doctor. Dutifully, I studied sciences, biology. I got a good score. At that time, I had the courage to tell him, sorry, this is not my cup of tea. He said, you wasted your time, because otherwise you studied social sciences or something else. What to do? I think, I was studying in a college, Lila College, and my father Garden was my principal, who used to play tennis. I had 2 choices in my career: to become a professional player I was playing a very good competitive tennis or to seek a career. My father said, forget about professional career as a tennis player, try to pursue. My father Garden said, gave a letter, go to XLRI Jamshedpur and join there. There is a called labor welfare course. So I went to Jamshedpur and then I talked there and I was told it was a very different environment. I never crossed Vizag, that side. I never crossed Hyderabad, this side. Whatever I have done in Pune, Bombay, because I used to play a lot of tennis more in southern states. So when I went there, then I was told after you get this 18 months at that time, 66, you will be in a mines as a welfare officer because you qualified. Which somehow, having been my grandparents have been in the mining industry, it didn't suit me. I came back and there were a lot of disturbances were happening in East. I came back. Then being a judge's son, my father said next choice is law. I was very inclined to do law, so I joined law. But having spent 2 years and doing it, meanwhile, it so happened, that's why I said not scripted. My senior, who was a great barrister, he became a judge. So it was too much for me to take on my own. Then there was an ad in the DCM management trainee. I said, let me pursue. That is the first time I went, and I went in the late February. I was shivering in Delhi. I said, how can I survive? But, I think, when you are put to this arts, you make you strong. But it didn't end the story. I think since it's a storytelling, let me tell you, Dr. Charatram, I was given in the DCM, out of 18 management trainees of that year, 16 were engineers, predominantly IITs, some of them IIMs. If there is any engineer from any other institute, it was only Roorkee. Out of 18, only 2 guys were odd men. It is me as well as one guy from a chartered accountant. Then my Dr. Charatram, we worked with the HR guys. At that time, still it is called, it will be interesting to note, we used to have a division called ORTD, Organization, Recruitment and Training and Development. This was, I'm talking even 71. So he said, I've spent some time in sales and marketing. Then he said, go to Calcutta, work in Usha Sewing Machine Works. That is where I started. The first Garao has taken place in that factory before I joined. I went at baptism by fire. That's how I started loving this profession of HR. I had the opportunity to work in sales. I had the opportunity working in commercial, but I said, let me try this. And I went there. That's where I absorbed. I just want to tell you for youngsters, I know when you're saying about the employee relations, there are many sides of the employee relations, many dimensions. I think my learnings are whatever I am today, I owe to the management trainee scheme of DCM, Senior Management Trainee, more than the management course I have formally done later, whatever I learned from others, but that made me a stronger to become a manager, which I felt I can contribute. I just want to tell you, when the Garaos happened there, I was told before I went, I faced many Garaos, but it never bothered me. I took it on my own. But when the cases were challenged before the court, the judges were Garawat. I think they study the intensity of the industrial relations. There's a famous case of J Engineering Works, which is part of the DCM in those cases reported in 69, 70. So I think it made me stronger than whether it's a cold or hot or floods. It never bothered because DCM took me to all over the places, be it in Agra. I didn't know much about Hindi at that time. I learned, or it be it Hyderabad, be it Calcutta, be it Delhi. So I think it makes you a rounded personality, and the options were given in different functions. But ultimately, I've chosen to be in HR, whatever you call at that time, IR and PM. I think what I learned in IR in early 70s helped me a lot when I was retiring as the non-executive chairman of GSK. The last instances were not relating to company law or shareholding matters. It is to do with the unions. So I think, what helps where, when and how, you cannot script it. I think if you see 2 of my experiences, which I want to say, I spent about 7 years with this DCM, but I spent my association with GSK was 42 years, both executive and non-executive. But the point is, I was allowed to have the exposure to the family meetings of the promoters at that time. As a management trainee, my boss was leading that. It's where the legal and corporate governance. So that helped me a lot. I started my career with the promoters. I ended up in a way career with Max Group in the promoters. In between, I've been associated with multinationals. So I think ultimately what it makes you a person is when you get that sort of experiences. Some people say that, how could you spend so much time with GSK? I said, I have to say it by giving one simple answer. I have spent directly or as a board or an executive, non-executive, 42 years in one company. I have not changed my name. My company's name has changed 4 times. But I still continue to be what I am, because that helped me give different opportunities to work with different cultures, which I felt is very important. So ultimately what I'm trying to say is change is constant, whether it's change because South versus North, East versus West, or cold versus hot. But what is important is whether you are in HR, whether you are in any other profession, I think it's important, are you willing to adopt and adapt to the situation, which was reinforced when we got the COVID. That is how we could come out. So once you have that, can you believe it? I think Rajiv also will reinforce it. I started my career for 27 years. I've never seen internet. I've never seen a mobile. So to adapt after 27 years to this environment where you used to call a stenographer and dictate, and the letter goes to London and it takes 2 days to come back. So those are the style. Now you have agility. You're talking about change with the times, rapidness. It makes it much more challenging. Once you experience this, I think you can survive in any situation. That's a lengthy explanation, but that's how I put it.
Sure, the lengthy explanation comes so powerfully because, it comes straight from your heart and depicts all the experiences and the journeys that you've had. A related question, and I think after Dwarka sir, I would invite others also to give their opinion on this, since you touched on this very, what would I say, sensitive but important aspect of an HR, the dealing in the IR space. How do you tell the youngsters about what IR today is and how do they cultivate that sense for IR? Because we're talking so much about future of work, we're talking so much about, remote working, we're talking so much about service space, we're talking so many things which to people, including me and the previous generations, look like very sophisticated, if that was a word to put. But I think at the heart of it, there is IR somewhere. I feel so personally. I would like your expert, opinion as to what would you suggest from the IR facet to every practicing professional today?
Thank you. It's a great question. I wish I can answer you. You see, the word IR is very much misunderstood in the HR fraternity, especially when you pass out from the business schools, with due respects. Nobody wants to do IR. They think, IR is a very dirty job. It's a little bit demeaning, if I can use a strong word. This is not meant for me. I passed out from a premier business school, or I want to do something. I want to do a corporate job. I think, that is the premise on which go. Firstly, it's a myth. I think partly it comes from the faculty, teaching faculty, with due respects, because most of the teaching faculty do not have any practical experience. In our times, employee industrial relations means management and union relations, or a blue collar works management. I mean, we're not talking about it. Now the whole word of, you call whether industrial relations or employee relations, the width and breadth of the employee relations has undergone a very significant paradigm shift, if I can say. I think, I learned employees engagement. I've learned the transformation changes. because of the mergers and acquisitions or anything else I have done, whatever little bit I've contributed, whether DCM or GSK or Max, it is primarily because I had a great foundation in touching the hearts of the people, understanding the pulse, not at the corporate level, at the shop floor level, as well as at the sales level. So I think, my orientation is when I started it in sales, my sales manager told me, guys, you don't stand there. You also start cleaning the sewing machines. I think, that is the orientation we need to give it. It is employee relations or industry relations will stay in a different way. If I go and tell today's students, I will teach you OD in employee relations, they're very happy to go through that process. If you say employee relations, they think it is labor laws or it's a union management relations. For me, employee relations has got much wider connotation. It applies to each and every person, right from Mali to Malik. That's how I put it. I think right from a gatekeeper or an unskilled worker or a casual worker to the chairman of the company, you have the ability to navigate and build relationships. You call about stakeholders management, you can only learn stakeholders management. You have done a real employee relations. It is not just negotiations with the union. When I was in Horlicks factory, I was asked to deal with the milk producers of the whole area, 20,000 people, because you had the ability to understand. You understand the mind of the others, understand what they are, how you can bridge the gap between them. So it is applicable. And I've said it in many forums, and many other colleagues here have said it. And especially Pratik is here because he had a great experience in IT industry. I think I have faced a strike with the junior doctors in health industry. Can you believe it? And if you see in the book, ultimately medical reps in GSK Pharma and GSK Consumer were never merged in India because of the strategic issues involved. So I think we need to be sensitive to the needs of the people. It is not a firefighting anymore. It is a holistic approach to the employees' engagement, managing the change. When you think about the change need not be a macro change. Very minor change, as you perceive as a management, could be a major change for the employee. I just want to conclude, Vijayji, by just giving it. 25 years back, when you were shifting the corporate office from the heart of the city of Delhi, since some of you are familiar with Delhi, from the Connaught Place to Gurgaon, it is a big change. I think if we have not anticipated that change and we have not communicated and involvement of people, empowering them, we won't have done it. Because at the same time when we were done, we have made many offers to them in the sense that a nice building, you have a more space to operate, you have many other freebies. But at the same time, another multinational, the same building has changed. When the CEO of the global company came to cut the ribbon, there was agitation and there was an injunction because there was no buy-in of the people. So what you think as a minor change as a management could be a major change for the employee. So if you understand, you can understand better when you have those pulse of the people and try to engage them. Despite that, there could be issues, but that is different. So, thank you.
Wonderful, sir. So I'll just take a pause and ask other three panelists also on any personal experiences that could enlighten the transition from old time IR to current times IR. I will assume IR persists across. How has it evolved in its consumption as a function? I'll just open it, maybe if for ease of sequence, can I just start with Raghuji, because you migrated continents, and then is there something that you see across?
Yeah, I think Dwarakanathji makes a very valid point. Things are changing. I have dealt with Teamsters, IAW, some of the more militant unionists in the US and elsewhere. I find that in the last 15 years, the influence of the unions had come down. It's starting to revive once again. And partly because I think the topics that they're concerned with is changing as well. Yeah, they've always been focused on shorter working hours, more wages, more overtime, traditional stuff, right? But now coming out of the pandemic, and I'm here advising a couple of companies, unions are starting to talk about work-life balance. Unions are starting to talk about more meaningful and purpose-based organizations. Unions are talking about education and reskilling and upskilling. I think that's a very fresh approach. And for them to be talking about that actually is making you a little more proactive in terms of what needs to be done for the welfare of our employees. I also like what Mr. Dwarkanath said. People value what they build. And if you include them and engage with them in the conversations you have, they are likely to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I think we have now it's our responsibility to make unions, make industrial relations part of our conversations, not exclude them. For the betterment, we have the common agenda of bettering the lives of our workers. And I think using them as a leverage and support will be incredibly important in future. That's the trend you're starting to see in terms of IR these days.
Thank you so much. And once to Pratik, and then I'll go back to Dwarka ji and then come to Rajiv ji. Pratik, your opinion on this?
No, thanks. I think both Dwarka and Raghu have very lucidly brought it out. So I'm not going to repeat what they've already said, but very simply put, we need to understand that the whole context of manufacturing itself is changing. Manufacturing of today is and will be very, very different even going forward. The confluence of technology with manufacturing is throwing up new opportunities in terms of the roles which were earlier not existing. So that I think for us to be able to appreciate how IR itself will evolve, we need to understand what changes do we foresee as things are happening and going forward. So that is one. Two, there is a generational shift in the demographics of the workforce.
Right.
They're a lot younger. They're a lot more savvy. The way they communicate today, all of them have the smartphones and they're connected and they're all on the social media and they connect with their counterparts across. So these are not the people whom you could actually bring them into a room and be able to speak and, from top down. That's one. And increasingly, there is that blurring of the way I see it, blurring of lines between what used to be the white collar and blue collar, right? And the whole concept of white collar is fading away into significance faster than what many people are comprehending. So I think there are multiple changes, but on the positive side, I also noticed that what Raghu touched on is very important, that the influence of union, the way it was seen and perceived earlier, is changing.
So in the interest of time, if I may just interject, we just have a minute or so. If you could just give us quick keywords.
Yeah, so the workforce is equally eager to learn and to be trained and to move on to the new set of opportunities which are coming up. And I think that's hugely welcome.
Thank you very much. Sorry for cutting it short. There was one question from a student when, Raghu was saying, and I'll put it to Dwarka ji, not to Raghu himself, that if you have to send away somebody, you need to make a cold decision, but you need to hand it out in a very warm manner. Any, one-liner on that, because I just have 1 minute. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I have been saying this since 92. What my mentors taught me, art of tough love. Tough on issues, soft on people. How you treat him with dignity and talk to him makes a lot of difference. He may not be happy with the outcome, but the way you treat him and deal with him and explain the rationale will make things much simpler and easier. Execution will be easy and he will appreciate and understand. He may not like the outcome, but he will appreciate the process. I think fair and equity.
Thank you so much. And I think, before Anil, wraps it up for us, Rajiv ji, any one-liner for that?
Yeah, no, I want to go back to my favorite subject, this IR, HR. I have never in my life understood or ever differentiated between IR and HR. And I've been dealing with workers and unions since 1976. They are the same human beings. I also believe that the role of IR is to unleash the potential towards achievement of a process, and whatever applies to so-called HR and white collar applies 100% to blue collar and IR, and I have always done that. So I just don't understand this difference between IR and HR. That's my take.
That's a very, I think, simply put, lucidly put, I think for the generation of students, there is IR and HR across the board, and you just need to know the application of the spirit of the law, if not the law itself, so that you can make justice to the people around and give them a fair treatment. Anil, over to you and your closing
I
remarks.
just want to say thank you. I think this has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope the students will speak to their batchmates and classmates and encourage many more to watch these videos, because there aren't enough students present
Yes,
online
they're
right
missing out
now.
on a
But I'm
wonderful
sure
conversation.
they will use the opportunity to see that later. So all the very best, and thank you once again. Thanks a million to all 4 friends who have come here and empowered all of us with their wonderful knowledge and experience. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Genuinely, thank you to all
Thank
of
you.
you.
Thanks
And,
a lot.
Good night.
wonderful
Thank you so much,
having
sir.
heard from all of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
so much. Good night. Good job, people.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for this
Let's save
opportunity.
Let's save this experience and learn more. Yeah. Yes.
Definitely.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Many more to come.
Good night. Yes.